This is a blue whale, and by raw mass, this is the heaviest animal to ever have stepped fin on the planet, or so we thought. At over 80 feet long and weighing 200 tons, the blue whale was supposed to be the largest possible animal that could exist, not because evolution didn't get the chance to make anything bigger, but because there literally couldn't be a bigger body before the laws of physics would cause it to collapse under its own weight and die. The blue whale exists right on the edge of what is biologically possible, the absolute maximum capacity of animal. That was until we found this jawbone. This is, or was, the ichthyotitan, and it is the only time in history that an animal grew large enough to actually challenge the blue whale for the title of largest animal ever. And strangely enough, this animal wasn't even a whale. So how big actually was this creature, and why did it go extinct? Well, to understand how large this thing was, let's first agree on what large actually means. Usually when people ask, what's the biggest animal, they're talking about mass, weight, the sheer amount of biological matter taking up space. Because if we were judging by length, the blue whale actually loses to a bunch of animals already. The Argentinosaurus was a dinosaur that measured around 115 feet long, easily beating the whale in a measuring contest. But a huge chunk of that length was just a skinny neck and a whip tail. It was basically a walking suspension bridge. It weighed maybe 80 or 90 tons max, which is still really heavy. The blue whale is double that. And if you want to get really technical, the bootlace worm can reach 180 feet long, but it weighs about as much as a wet sock. That's not actually giant, that's just a really long piece of string. The blue whale is the number one because it has a lot of whale in it. It is a solid 200-ton block of meat and blubber. So how big was the ichthyotitan? Estimates put it at about 85 feet long, but it wasn't just a skinny noodle trying to win on a technicality. This thing was also thick, really, really thick, about 120 tons thick. But does this mean it's lighter than a blue whale? I know I said blue whales were 200 tons and we're going off mass, right? Well, yes, but actually, no. Stay with me for a sec. If we look at the official numbers for ichthyotitan, the estimates put it at roughly 120 tons, which, don't get me wrong, is heavy. That's like 13 T-Rexes taped together. But this is the estimate for the largest specimen they found in the UK of the ichthyotitan. The average estimate for the ichthyotitan is about 80 tons, still ridiculously massive, but a blue whale is 200 tons. So the whale still wins easily, right? Well, no, because that 200-ton figure is also the upper limit of blue whales. The heaviest one ever found was 209 tons. The average blue whale is actually only 100 to 150 tons, which is the same range as the ichthyotitan being 120 tons. I promise I'm not just trying to bait you guys towards a super close match between these sizes. These animals have pushed the limits of evolution, and we literally don't know enough about the ichthyotitan to give a true definitive answer. There's just not that much evidence of them. With blue whales, we have measured thousands of them because, well, they're alive, and they're not really the best at hiding. For ichthyotitan, we have found two jawbones. What are the mathematical odds that out of millions of these things that lived over millions of years, we just happened to find the single largest individual to ever exist? Basically zero. But there's another factor that suggests these sea monsters were actually way bigger than this 80-ton average. First, there's Ost colossus. Years ago, before ichthyotitan was officially named, scientists found a different, much older jawbone in a place called Ost. And for the longest time, this bone was just a mystery. It was clearly from an ichthyosaur, but it was so comically large that people were hesitant to even classify it. It sat in a sort of paleontological limbo because no one wanted to be the guy who claimed he found a sea monster and turned out to be wrong. But now that we have the ichthyotitan diagnosis, we can look back at the Ost colossus and realize, wait, these are likely the same animal, or at least the same type of giant, and the Ost bone is bigger. This isn't confirmed, but it is the likely guess. If you run the math on the standard ichthyotitan bones, you get the 80-ton estimate. But if you plug Ost colossus into the equation, the size jumps to nearly 29 meters long, and the weight skyrockets to around 175 tons. Okay, but that's still less than the 209 tons for the biggest blue whale. But again, Ost colossus isn't, or at least likely isn't, the maximum size. So if we take that 175-ton estimate and we treat it like an average large adult, just like a 120-ton blue whale, and then we scale it up to see what the maximum version would look like, the math gets stupid. If an ichthyotitan followed the same growth curve as a whale, where the absolute limits of the species are about 60% heavier than the average adults, the theoretical maximum size for the species wouldn't be 175 tons. It would be closer to 280 tons.